All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. The opt-out economy. Men creating alternatives to gynocentric systems, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. The opt-out economy. A field guide for men who still notice reality. The Pygmalion trap. Why the "you'd be perfect if" hoax is a Marxist mind virus. How the scholastic gulag manufactures serfs, and why the rational man must opt out of the gynocentric casino to reclaim the logos. You have been herded into a scholastic gulag. Gentlemen, sold a fraudulent bill of goods, where the noble equality of opportunity, that bedrock of natural law, was swapped in a sleight of hand for the Marxist poison of equity. It is a syllogism of societal suicide. If the competent are oppressive by nature, and oppression is the supreme evil, then competence must be dismantled to elevate the mediocre. Look at the modern academy. It is no longer a forge for the apprenticeship mastery ladder, but a high-cost indoctrination camp where due process is sacrificed on the altar of the gynocentric believe-all victim standard. Turning the presumption of innocence into a thought crime, they have stripped the trivium from the curriculum and replaced it with lived experience, creating a generation of baristas with master's degrees who possess no virtue other than the ability to parrot the pathologies of cultural Marxism. This is not education. It is the deliberate sterilization of the masculine mind, a war against the very concept of objective truth designed to render you a compliant serf in a woke theocracy. But the rot extends beyond the lecture hall. It has metastasized into the culture itself, weaponizing ugliness against the good. The leftists, following the aesthetic decrees of critics like Eagleton, have decided that beauty is bourgeois because it reveals the hierarchy of competence they seek to destroy. When you look at a brutalist slab of concrete or a piece of performance art consisting of a banana taped to a wall, you are not seeing art, you are seeing a middle finger raised against the divine. A deliberate demoralization tactic intended to sever your connection to the transcendentals. This is the feminization of the spirit, chaotic, emotional, and devoid of the ordering principle of logos. They destroy the hero and worship the victim because a civilization of victims is a civilization that can be managed, controlled, and milked by the bureaucratic elite. By accepting their relativistic frame that all art is subjective, you have accepted a lie that refutes itself, for if all standards are subjective, then their standard of social justice holds no objective weight either. Finally, realize that this psychological warfare has invaded your bedroom through the gynocentric inquisition of modern dating. You are being tested not for your worth, but for your compliance. She tells you you'd be perfect if you just changed a few things, and like a fool, you nod, thinking it is a path to intimacy. It is, in fact, a predatory linguistic anchor designed to erode your sovereignty and turn you into a clay puppet for her projection. The demand that you handle rejection gracefully is a trap. She holds the power to define your reaction as creepy or violent regardless of your stoicism, maintaining a frame of gamma bias where she is the eternal victim and you are the potential oppressor. The red pill truth is that these deep conversations she demands are merely emotional extraction industries, mining your soul for resources while offering nothing but a moving goalpost of validation in return. It is time to smash the idol of the perfect relationship and see the gynocentric contract for what it is, a raw deal that exchanges your liberty for her fleeting approval. The scholastic gulag breeding sameness through equity. The modern university has become a gynocratic re-education camp, a scholastic gulag designed not to liberate the mind, but to shackle the masculine spirit in the chains of debt and dogma. The etymological root of university is the Latin universitas, meaning the whole universe, yet the modern institution is a fragment, a shard of ideological bias masquerading as universal truth, a deliberate deception. The new god of this academic wasteland is equity, a term bastardized from its noble roots to serve the toxic feminine imperative for enforced sameness. Whereas equality of opportunity is the masculine principle of the race, equity is the feminine principle of the handicap. A linguistic Trojan horse concealing a Marxist weapon to gale the stallion so the pony can keep pace, a cruel and unnatural line. We see this play out in the diversity monoculture, a Orwellian masterpiece of gamma bias. For diversity of skin tone is demanded, but diversity of thought is punished. As the leftist ideological monoculture pathologizes masculine excellence and heterodoxy as toxic, creating a rigid conformity that would shame a Borg cube, a seething hive mind of indistinguishable identitarian drones. This systemic rot is laid bare in the case study, the credentialism trap. I have seen the anecdotal reality of the master's degree barista, a young man broken by the feminization of education, his credentials inflated by the printing press of academic degrees, while his competency is deflated by the absence of real challenge, left enslaved by usurious debt to the very system that betrayed him, a serf in all but name. His counterpart in health is the product of the apprenticeship mastery ladder, a Western tradition based on objective competence, patience, and the transgenerational transmission of knowledge through dialectic and doing. The university grad can theorize about the lived experience of the oppressed, but the master craftsman can build the house that keeps the rain off his head, a syllogism in wood and stone that refutes the ivory tower's lies. The due process void of Title IX tribunals is the canary in the coal mine, innocent until proven guilty. A bulwark of Western civilization has been replaced by the gynocratic standard of believe all victims, a reversion to witch trial logic where an accusation is a conviction and the male is guilty unless he can prove a negative, a kangaroo court where the lived experience of the accuser trumps the logic and evidence of the accused. This institutional rot is compounded by the Eagleton aesthetic of decay, the leftist obsession with ugliness and deconstruction, as seen in Terry Eagleton's Marxist aesthetics, is a deliberate strategy to demoralize the human spirit and sever the connection to the divine by removing the beautiful from education. They create a wasteland of the soul, making the male subject more susceptible to their Wookiee shepherd's crook, for a man who cannot perceive the transcendent is a man who can be controlled. The only remedy is the restoration of the principle of subsidiarity. We must return educational power to the family and the guild, dismantling the centralized monopoly of the woke indoctrination complex brick by brick. For the salvation of the male spirit and the future of civilization itself depends on our courage to opt out of the gulag and build alternatives in the wasteland, a new citadel of truth. This erosion of merit is the necessary precursor to the death of beauty. When a civilization rejects the logos, the masculine ordering principle of the universe, it inevitably descends into the chaotic inertia of the feminine, where feelings trump form and sentimentality strangles skill. I contend that the degradation of the university was merely the rehearsal for the total desecration of the arts. The cultural Marxist cannot create, he can only deface. By dismantling the objective standards of the trivium, they have removed the mental scaffolding that allows a man to distinguish a masterwork from a prank, rendering him blind to the transcendentals. We are now living under a tyranny of the ugly, enforced by the spiritually blind, where the noble faculty of discrimination has been rebranded as a sin to pave the way for the profane. The aesthetics of envy, weaponizing ugliness against the good. I once stood in a gallery where a banana duct taped to a canvas commanded a price tag of $12,000, while in the next room a Renaissance masterpiece gathered dust. This isn't just a market anomaly, it is a deliberate desecration, a symptom of the cultural necrosis we have allowed to fester. The Marxist critical theorists, beginning with the likes of Terry Eagleton, have spent a century drilling the lie into the collective consciousness that beauty is nothing more than a bourgeois construct, a frivolous distraction from the serious business of class warfare. But this is a fundamental error of biology and metaphysics. Beauty is not a social construct to be dismantled by the envious. It is an objective signal of health, symmetry, and order, honed by millions of years of evolutionary pressure. When a man looks upon a statue of David or the columns of the Parthenon, he is not seeing an arbitrary standard imposed by a ruling class. He is seeing the structural logic of the universe made manifest, a reflection of the natural law that governs all things. To reject beauty is to reject reality itself, preferring the comforting, ugly lies of egalitarianism over the harsh, glorious truth of hierarchy. Consider the evolutionary mechanics that the left desperately tries to obscure with their pseudo-intellectual jargon. Across cultures and millennia, human beings have instinctually favored facial symmetry, clear skin and proportionate physiques, visual markers of genetic fitness and the absence of disease. This is the good inextricably linked to the true. A healthy civilization seeks to emulate these standards, elevating the beautiful because it represents the pinnacle of human potential. However, the gynocratic order, fueled by the biologically dishonest premises of feminism, cannot tolerate this hierarchy. Women who are hypergamous by nature, seeking the best genes for their offspring, are instrumentalized by cultural Marxism to weaponize their sexual selection power against civilization. By enforcing body positivity and demonizing traditional standards of beauty, they are not being inclusive, they are engaged in a profound act of psychological projection, attempting to force society to love the ugly, the unhealthy, and the degenerate simply because they embody those very traits. It is a tactical maneuver to lower the bars so that the mediocre and malicious can step over it without effort. The logical inconsistencies of the left are so glaring they could blind a cyclops. Yet they persist through the complicity of a feminized culture that fears confrontation. Let us wield the trivium as a sword to cut through their nonsense. The leftist dogma states that all standards of beauty are subjective and relative. Yet this same ideology seeks to enforce new standards of wokeness through diversity quotas and cancel culture. Here is the syllogism that annihilates their position. If all aesthetic values are subjective, then the judgment that Western art is oppressive is also subjective and holds no objective weight. Therefore, the leftist has no grounds to dismantle the canon. Conversely, if their new standards of equity are objectively good, then objective goodness exists, and we must look to history to see which cultures actually achieved it. They cannot have it both ways. They want the subjective chaos of art is whatever you feel, combined with the objective authority of you must bow to the pride flag. It is a scam, a linguistic sleight of hand designed to dispossess men of their heritage and their sanity. This assault on objective beauty is accompanied by the conversation trap, a particularly insidious rhetorical tactic deployed by those who fear the bright light of dialectic. You have seen this in action. When a man states a hard truth based on facts and logic, the leftist or the feminist immediately demands nuance, calls for a conversation, or asks who gets to decide. This is not a quest for understanding. It is a feminine delaying tactic meant to wear down masculine decisiveness. In the classical tradition, dialectic was a method of arriving at the truth through reasoned argument, a combat of the intellect where the best idea won. Today, this has been replaced by the therapeutic state, where feelings supersede facts. They do not want a debate, they want an intervention. They want to drag you into the endless convoluted nuance of feelings until you are too exhausted to maintain your position. The remedy is simple: refuse the premise. There is no conversation to be had about whether a man in a dress is a woman or whether a pile of trash is art. These are settled matters of natural law and biological fact. This corruption of the aesthetic sense has inevitably led to the degradation of our physical environment, the architecture of the spirit. Look at the modern cityscape. Brutalist concrete blocks, glass boxes devoid of ornamentation, and public art that looks like industrial waste. This is not an accident. Living in an environment of chaos and ugliness induces a state of internal disorder, a kind of spiritual toxoplasmosis that makes the populace docile and receptive to leftist submission. The opt-out economy requires men to reclaim the power of creation. We must recognize that the toxoplasmosis of culture, this chaotic, emotional, structureless void, is the direct result of removing the masculine logos from the artistic process. When reason is exiled, all that remains is the hysterical emotional discharge of the disturbed. To build a beautiful home, to master a craft, to create art that reflects the divine order is an act of rebellion against the gynocracy. It is the assertion that the male spirit refuses to live in the squalid utopia the feminists have designed for us. Ultimately, this is a battle for the soul of Western civilization, a struggle defined by the transcendentals, the true, the good, and the beautiful. These three are inseparable, a holy trinity of reality. You cannot attack beauty without simultaneously severing the head of truth and amputating the arm of goodness. When the modernist burned the Vitruvian Man, he didn't just destroy a drawing, he tried to kill the very concept of human perfection. The Marxist fixation on the victim narrative is the antithesis of the Western canon's heroic path. The canon teaches us that life is struggle, that obstacles are meant to be overcome, and that glory awaits the victor. The leftist ideology teaches that struggle is unfair, that obstacles are systemic oppression, and that glory is a sin. They want to turn you into a victim because a victim is helpless, dependent, and easily controlled by the state. But you are not a victim. You are a man capable of reason, capable of distinguishing the masterpiece from the mess, and capable of opting out of their ugly, lying world to build a new one rooted in the eternal truths of your ancestors. The desecration of beauty is merely the cosmetic scar of a deeper necrosis. It is the outward sign that the logos, the ordering principle of the universe, has been usurped by the chaotic whims of the collective feminine unconscious. When a civilization replaces the sublime with the self-pitying victim narrative, it does not merely produce bad art, it engineers a domesticated, compliant male who accepts the ugly and the untrue as the new normal. But this hallucination requires an ever-increasing injection of your lifeblood to sustain its metabolic rate of decay. There comes a point where the rational man ceases his protest against the noise and simply cuts the microphone. If the structure is built to extract your value while mocking your ancestors, the only dialectical response is total withdrawal. The gynocentric inquisition testing as a tool of domination. The house always wins, and in the gynocratic casino of modern courtship, the game is rigged so thoroughly that the only rational move is to pocket your chips and walk out the door. We define the opt-out economy not as a retreat, but as a strategic reallocation of capital. It is the refusal of the rational male to perform for the fleeting dopamine hit of female validation when the return on investment is a liability. Consider the syllogism of the exploited male. If the state functions as the surrogate husband, redistributing the wealth of the laboring man to the voting female via the mechanism of taxation, and if the mating market is saturated with mechanisms designed to extract resources without the guarantee of paternity or loyalty, then the man who labors for this system is not a partner, but a beast of burden. By withdrawing our surplus energy from this parasitic loop and investing it instead into civil society associations, brotherhood, and the mastery of our own souls, we starve the beast. You do not negotiate with a machine designed to grind your bones into bread, you unplug it. Consider the scorpion and the frog, a fable often recited, but rarely heeded by the blue-pilled masses desperate for a swim across the river. Arthur Schopenhauer, that titan of German pessimism, posited that the will to life manifests in the feminine not as a conscious malice, but as an instinctive, immoral manipulation to secure the survival of the species at the expense of the individual male. The modern test, those erratic, chaotic behaviors designed to provoke a reaction, is not a glitch in the system. It is the scorpion's nature. To hate the woman for testing you is as futile as cursing the rain for being wet. The error lies not in her nature, which is fixed, but in your foolish decision to carry her across the river in the first place. You are not her savior, you are her utility, and the moment you cease to be useful, or the moment you show vulnerability, the stinger strikes. The red pill is the realization that you are not in a partnership with a being capable of reciprocal honor, but engaging with a biological imperative that views you as a disposable resource. Let us dismantle the provisioning lie with the cold steel of formal logic. Major premise: if a mechanism for selection exists, it must serve a survival function distinct from the alternatives. Minor premise: the state currently provides security, wealth, and social status to women regardless of their mate's competence, via welfare, affirmative action, and divorce courts. Conclusion: therefore, the modern female test for security and confidence is obsolete as a Lynchian mechanism and has devolved into a sadistic game for attention extraction. When a woman demands you prove your stability, she is asking you to duplicate what the government already provides her, merely for the privilege of her company. She wants the alpha's genetics and the beta's resources. A dualistic mating strategy sterilized of its risk by the cultural Marxists who ensured she can wield the state's gun to extract the latter if you fail to provide the former. Nowhere is this extraction more insidious than in the demand for deep conversation early in the courtship ritual. This is the deep conversation ruse, a gamma-level manipulation tactic designed to bypass a man's natural barrier of competence and action to harvest his emotional labor. Feminism, acting as the vanguard of cultural decay, has taught women that their feelings are the supreme datum of the universe, the lived experience trumping objective reality. By demanding you spill your soul, your traumas, and your fears, she is not seeking intimacy. She is mapping your vulnerabilities to use them against you later in the divorce courts or during a petty argument. In the natural order, men bond through shared struggle and action, not through the feminine primary mode of verbal diarrhea. Refusing to play the therapist is not toxic masculinity, it is the preservation of your sovereignty against an emotional vampire. Observe the rejection paradox, a double bane so Kafkaesque it would be funny if it weren't destroying the psyches of young men. A woman rejects a man, society cheers, calling it empowerment and boundaries. A man reacts to this rejection with anything other than a stoic smile, and he is scrutinized as an incel or a potential threat. The syllogism of the feminist inquisition runs thus: if male sexuality is framed as inherently predatory, and if a woman's rejection is a moral good, then a man's display of hurt or confusion at rejection is proof of his predatory pathology. You are damned if you accept it with grace, for you are a cuck, and damned if you show anger, for you are a monster. The only winning move is to never place your self-worth in the hands of a judge who despises your very existence. Beware the "you'd be perfect if" hook, the most predatory NLP tactic in the gynocratic arsenal. When a woman drops this sentence, she is planting a neg, a seed of insecurity intended to grow into a vine of codependency. She attempts to negate your objective value as a man, your competence, your strength, your independence, by dangling the carrot of her approval just out of reach. You'd be perfect if you were more sensitive, or you'd be perfect if you spent more time with me, translates to you would be a better servant if you were more broken. This is a direct assault on your sovereignty. A man of virtue, grounded in the transcendentals of the good and the true, does not seek the modification of his character from a source that feeds on his weakness. He recognizes the hook, laughs at the audacity, and keeps walking. The remedy to this chaotic assault is amused mastery. You do not defeat a toddler's tantrum by arguing with it. You defeat it by maintaining your frame and viewing the outburst with the stoicism of a father who has seen it all before. When she tests you, provoking jealousy, withdrawing affection, or starting a trivial argument, she is subconsciously checking to see if you are a sturdy oak or a wavering reed. If you react with anger or supplication, you fail. If you react with amused mastery, acknowledging her behavior as the cute, irrational fuss of a child, you assert your dominance, you refuse to enter her frame. This is the resurrection of the patriarchal spirit, not through brutality, but through the unshakable, confident frame of a man who knows who he is and refuses to be moved by the winds of emotional hysteria. Ultimately, we must debunk the romanticized evolutionary psychology that suggests these tests are benevolent mechanisms to find a good provider. In the ancestral environment, a woman's survival depended on her mate's competence. A test was a matter of life and death. Today, in a world of plenty and state-subsidized existence, these tests have mutated into dominance plays. They are not checking if you can hunt the mammoth. They are checking if they can break your spirit. They are checking your vulnerability to manipulation. To opt out is to look at the rigged table, the dealer with the ace up her sleeve, and the bouncers at the door, and realize that your time is better spent building a cathedral with your brothers than gambling for pennies in a whorehouse. This metamorphosis is not benevolence. It is a violation of natural law bordering on metaphysical murder. To submit to the chisel is to admit that your native state, the biological and spiritual inheritance of your forefathers, is defective simply because it fails to amuse the modern feminine ego. We are not put on this earth to be iterated upon by a committee of one, nor to have our virtues redefined as vices to satiate a tyrant's boredom. The demand that you alter your essence is not a pathway to partnership. It is the precursor to a spiritual death, a logical absurdity that we must now dismantle with the cold steel of the syllogism. The Pygmalion trap, refusing to be the clay. The ancient Greeks told of Pygmalion, the sculptor who carved a woman from ivory and begged the gods to breathe life into his creation. The myth is sold to us as a romance. I tell you, it is a horror story, a warning for every man who has sat across a dinner table while a woman lists his potential critiques, his posture, suggests improvements to his wardrobe, and hints that he would be perfect if only he changed everything about himself. The horror is recognizable. You are not a partner. You are a project. You are the raw clay, and she believes herself the divine potter. Consider the syllogism that dismantles this entire paradigm. If a man's value lies in his authentic self, a self encoded by natural law with unique purpose and telos, and the demand made upon him is to fundamentally alter that self to satisfy another's preferences, then the demand is not for improvement but for annihilation. To demand a man change his nature is to demand he cease to exist as a distinct entity. This is spiritual murder dressed in the language of growth. The modern gynocracy has rebranded erasure as evolution and called it love. The term toxic masculinity is the primary weapon in this campaign of erasure. Let us dissect this floating abstraction with the scalpel of formal logic. Toxicity is a property of substances that cause harm. Masculinity is the set of virtues, courage, strength, stoicism, protection, that enabled your ancestors to survive ice ages, repel invaders, and build every structure of civilization you inhabit. To concatenate toxic with masculinity is to commit a category error of civilizational consequence. The term does not identify a genuine phenomenon. It pathologizes any male behavior that refuses servitude to female or state interests. Strength becomes intimidation. Stoicism becomes emotional unavailability. Protection becomes control. The goal is not to cure toxicity, but to domesticate men into compliant consumers and tax livestock. The woman who views you as a fixer-upper is not expressing love. She is manifesting the hypergamous instinct in its most predatory form. She assesses you not as a sovereign being endowed with inherent dignity, but as a resource extraction opportunity. The project male is mined for utility, your income, your status, your labor, your social proof. Once extracted, she will move to the next seam. The cuckoldry statistics conservatively estimated at 10 to 15% of children being raised by men who are not their biological fathers, with some studies suggesting rates as high as 30% among certain demographics are not anomalies. They are the logical endpoint of a system that treats men as interchangeable utility units rather than irreplaceable souls. The economic case for refusing the Pygmalion trap is irrefutable. Consider the opportunity cost. A man who spends 20 years attempting to satisfy the infinite, shifting demands of a partner committed to his improvement sacrifices the mastery of craft, the building of brotherhood, The pursuit of excellence and the establishment of lasting legacy, the divorce statistics, over 40% of first marriages ending in dissolution, with women initiating approximately 70% of those filings, and family courts awarding maternal custody in over 80% of contested cases, reveal the wager you are asked to make. You bet your accumulated life capital on a game where the house holds every card and changes the rules at will. Subsidiarity, that great principle of Western political thought articulated by Aquinas and codified by Pius IV, holds that matters should be handled by the smallest, most local competent authority. Apply this to relationships. A partner who attempts to micromanage your friendships, your hobbies, your reading habits, your leisure time is not helping. She is violating your jurisdiction. She is committing an act of tyranny. The centralization of authority over your own life in the hands of another is always and everywhere a corruption. The man who yields his jurisdiction to a domestic bureaucrat has already lost his sovereignty. The restoration of exclusively male spaces is not a nostalgic indulgence, but a civilizational imperative. The lodge, the guild, the club, the boxing gym, the philosophical society, these were not boys' clubs born of exclusionary prejudice, but incubators of virtue where men were not projects to be molded, but peers engaged in mutual pursuit of excellence. In these spaces, a man was judged by his merit, his craftsmanship, his honor, not his compliance with the shifting demands of the domestic sphere. The systematic dismantling of these institutions was not accidental. A man without brothers is a man easily controlled. The act of refusal, saying no to the endless projectification of your existence, is not selfishness, but the highest moral good. It protects the integrity of the individual soul. It prevents the bureaucratization of the male spirit. The man who refuses to be clay preserves himself for the eternal, rather than surrendering to the temporal demands of a marketplace that prices him only by his willingness to be reshaped. The rational man, surveying this landscape with clear eyes, chooses accordingly. For some, this means the restoration of traditional structures with women who have not succumbed to the pathology rare but not extinct. For others, it means the deliberate pursuit of solitude, or the cultivation of brotherhood, or the channeling of creative energy into works that will outlast any domestic arrangement. The choice is yours. But understand, every moment spent attempting to satisfy the insatiable is a moment stolen from your actual purpose. You were not born to be improved, you were born to become what you already are. I look at the ruins of the modern agora, and I do not see a tragedy, I see a necessary purgation. You have walked with me through the charnel house of the scholastic gulag, and emerged with your mind intact, having seen the equity grift for what it is. A linguistic crowbar designed to pry merit from the hands of the deserving. You have stared into the void of the eagleton aesthetic, that cult of ugliness, and refused to let your spirit be demoralized by brutalist concrete blocks or the shapeless prose of the academic mediocrity. You have exposed the gynocentric inquisition for the simpering, emotional blackmail that it is, recognizing the test not as a path to intimacy, but as the whip hand of a tyrant checking for weak spots in your armor. You are no longer the naive apprentice, the project male right for domestication by a partner who views your sovereignty as a bug to be patched. You have broken the spell. The data, as they say, does not care about your feelings, and the data confirms we are living through a pandemic of spiritual cuckoldry. Consider the alimony racket, a state-sponsored extortion scheme where a man's industry is legally repurposed to fund the leisure of a former partner who now loathes him. Look at the no-fault divorce courts where the marriage contract, the only contract in existence where the breaching party is rewarded with half the assets, turns a man's home into a liquidation sale. Observe the paternity fraud rates, a silent epidemic where the village raises another man's genetic offspring while the biological father is none the wiser. These are not anomalies of the system. They are the features of the gynocracy designed to extract resources from the productive class to subsidize the chaotic consumption of the protected class. The feminization of the West has turned the state into a surrogate husband and the husband into a tax serf, stripping the masculine spirit of its drive and replacing it with a passive pharmaceutical compliance. But here is the glorious truth that the cultural Marxists and their feminist handmaidens fear more than anything. You hold the off switch. The parasite cannot survive if the host refuses to feed it. The opt-out economy is not about retreat. It is about strategic secession from a corrupted game. When you stop seeking the validation of a gynocentric society that despises your nature, you become invincible. When you reject the "you be perfect if" manipulation, you reclaim the raw ore of your own potential. You are now armed with the trivium, shielded by logic and guided by the transcendental good. You have walked through the flames of the Inquisition and found them to be nothing but the hot air of hysterical children. Take this knowledge, not as a burden but as a sword. Go forth, build your guilds, master your crafts, and starve the beast of its sustenance. The West does not need to be saved by politics. It needs to be rebuilt by free men. You are the remedy. Now act like it. And now the sponsored book introduction, The Opt-Out Economy. Men creating alternatives to gynocentric systems. If you're a man who feels like the world is stacked against you, this book is for you. If you've ever been told to man up while simultaneously being shamed for being too masculine, you're not alone. If you've watched your hard-earned money, your home, and even your children get ripped away in a divorce court that seems rigged against you, you're not imagining things. This book is for men who are tired of being treated like disposable assets in a system that favors women at every turn. It's for men who are ready to break free from the chains of modern marriage, toxic feminism, and the gynocentric institutions that have turned them into second-class citizens. I wrote this book because I've lived it. I've seen the system up close, and I felt its weight crushing me. I've been through the divorce courts, where I watched everything I worked for vanish overnight. I've been labeled a deadbeat dad despite paying child support and fighting to see my kids. I've been shamed for being too aggressive at work, only to be passed over for promotions because I wasn't assertive enough. I've seen the double standards, the hypocrisy, and the outright lies that feminism peddles to keep men down. And I've had enough. This book is not for everyone. If you're a feminist, a social justice warrior, or someone who believes in the myth of gender equality, put this book down now. Go read something else. This book is for men who are ready to face the hard truths about the world we live in. It's for men who are ready to take control of their lives, reject the lies they've been fed, and build something better. If you're not ready to hear the truth, if you're not ready to take action, then this book isn't for you. But if you're a man who's tired of being lied to, tired of being exploited, and ready to reclaim your dignity, then keep reading. In these pages, you'll find the tools you need to break free from the system that's been holding you back. You'll learn how to navigate the marriage plantation, avoid the traps of toxic masculinity, and build a life that's truly your own. You'll discover the power of male-only spaces, the importance of brotherhood, and the truth about the feminist lie. You'll see how men are creating alternative systems to bypass the gynocentric institutions that have oppressed them for generations. And you'll learn how to reclaim your male identity and thrive in a world that's stacked against you. This book is not just a critique of the system, it's a call to action. It's a roadmap for men who are ready to take back their lives, their dignity, and their future. If you're ready to stop being a victim and start being a man, then this book is for you. Let's get started. The Opt-Out Economy. Men Creating Alternatives to Gynocentric Systems, written by Conrad Reicher. Buy now, links in description.